I stood in my parents' office at Bennett Manufacturing, staring at the papers in my hand. 6 months of secret ownership, carefully hidden behind shell companies and legal frameworks, all leading to this moment. My father's signature was still fresh at the bottom of the latest loan document, a loan he didn't realize came from his own daughter. "Madison, what are you doing here?" My older brother Marcus burst into the office, his expensive suit wrinkled from another long day of pretending to run the company. "This is a private meeting." I carefully tucked the papers into my bag. "Just dropping off some documents from the bank." "Still working as a loan officer?" He smirked. "At least you found something within your capabilities." If he only knew that I owned the investment firm that had been keeping Bennett Manufacturing afloat for the past 6 months. While they thought I was processing simple loans at a local bank, I was actually orchestrating a complete takeover of our family business. "Where's Dad?" I asked, ignoring his jab. "Meeting with the board. We're discussing the company's future." Marcus straightened his tie. "Not that you'd understand the complexities of running a business this size." I bit back a laugh. Bennett Manufacturing had been struggling ever since Dad handed control to Marcus 2 years ago. My brother's leadership mainly consisted of long lunches with clients and expensive office renovations while the company bled money. "Madison." Mom's voice carried from the doorway. "I didn't expect to see you here." She entered the office, designer handbag swinging from her arm. The same handbag I'd secretly paid for when I covered their credit card debt last Christmas. "Just handling some paperwork," I said quietly. "Well, don't take too long. Your father's very busy today. The Anderson contract is causing some concerns." I knew all about the Anderson contract. It was sitting on my other desk in my real office across town, waiting for my signature. Though not as Madison Bennett, but as MB Carter, CEO of Carter Investment Group. "How are the payments going?" I asked innocently. "I heard there were some issues with the last loan." Marcus's face darkened. "That's none of your business. Just because you work at some small-town bank doesn't mean you understand our financial situation." "Oh, but I did. I understood exactly how close they were to bankruptcy when I started buying up their debt 6 months ago. I knew about every missed payment, every desperate attempt to secure new funding, every time they'd mortgaged their future to maintain their lifestyle." "I'm just trying to help," I said softly. "Help?" Mom laughed. "Sweetie, you can barely help yourself. How's that tiny apartment of yours?" "Still living paycheck to paycheck." They had no idea that I owned the entire building where my tiny apartment was located. Or that my paycheck to paycheck lifestyle was a carefully maintained facade while I built my own empire. "Speaking of help," Marcus cut in, "did you bring that money Dad asked for?" Yes. The reason for today's visit. Dad had called yesterday demanding I empty my savings account to help with an emergency capital shortfall. He'd framed it as my duty to the family, conveniently forgetting how they'd pushed me out of the company 3 years ago. I reached into my bag and pulled out a cashier's check. "Here's the $50,000 you asked for." Mom snatched it from my hand, not even bothering to thank me. Finally contributing something to this family. Though it's the least you could do considering everything we've given you. Given me? They'd given me nothing but doubt and dismissal. When I graduated with my MBA, they'd laughed at my plans to work in investment banking. When I tried to warn them about the company's financial problems 2 years ago, they'd accused me of being jealous of Marcus's success. "Madison," Dad's voice boomed from the doorway. "Good, you brought the money." He strode in, looking every bit the successful CEO he thought he still was. Behind him, I could see the board members filing out of the conference room, their faces grim. Another difficult meeting, no doubt. "Yes, I brought it," I replied. "Though I'd like to discuss the company's financial situation." "There's nothing to discuss," Dad cut me off. "Everything's under control. Marcus has it all handled." Marcus puffed up like a peacock. "Exactly. Second quarter projections are looking strong, and the Anderson contract will." "Will what?" I couldn't help asking. "Save the company? Like the Miller contract was supposed to? Or the Davidson project?" Dad's face turned red. "Watch your tone, young lady. Just because you process some loans at a local bank doesn't mean you understand how real business works." "I understand more than you think," I said, pulling out another document from my bag. "Like how you've been missing payments on the Carter Investment Group loans." The color drained from Marcus's face. How do you know about those? I have my sources. I laid the paper on Dad's desk. Did you even read the terms of those loans? The clauses about default and ownership. Of course I read them. Dad snapped, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. Everything was perfectly standard. Really? I raised an eyebrow. So you understand that Carter Investment Group now owns controlling interest in Bennett Manufacturing? The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's designer bag slipped from her shoulder, hitting the marble floor with a thud. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. We only took out emergency bridge loans. Short-term financing. With clauses that converted to equity in case of default, I finished. Which you've been in for the past 3 months. Dad grabbed the paper, his hands shaking slightly as he read. This is some kind of mistake. I would never agree to. But you did, I interrupted. You were so desperate for cash that you signed everything Carter Investment put in front of you. Never bothering to look beyond the surface, just like you never bothered to look beyond Marcus's fancy suits and empty promises. Get out. Dad's voice was low, dangerous. Get out of my office. Your office. I couldn't help but smile. I think you'll find that's debatable. Security. Marcus shouted, his face purple with rage. Get her out of here. 2 guards appeared in the doorway. The same guards whose paychecks I signed every month, though they didn't know it yet. Leave, Mom hissed, and don't come back. We don't need your pathetic little loans or your amateur financial advice. I allowed the guards to escort me to the lobby, maintaining my calm even as my family screamed behind me. They had no idea what was coming tomorrow morning. No idea that their world was about to turn upside down. As I reached the building's entrance, I heard Dad's final shout. And don't think we'll ever repay that $50,000. Consider it the price of your disloyalty. I stepped into my waiting car, not the modest Honda they thought I drove, but a Mercedes with tinted windows. Consider it the last time you ever take money from me, I whispered, pulling out my phone to set tomorrow's plans in motion. The next morning I arrived at Bennett Manufacturing in my usual work outfit. A simple blouse and skirt from Banana Republic. One last time playing the role they expected. The lobby was already buzzing with activity, employees whispering among themselves as my father's angry voice echoed from the executive floor. What do you mean, mandatory board meeting? I'm the CEO. I call the meetings. I smiled, checking my watch. Right on schedule. The elevator doors opened and a stream of people emerged. My lawyer, Sandra Chin, leading a team of corporate attorneys, representatives from Carter Investment Group, and several board members I'd been quietly meeting with for months. Ms. Carter, Sandra nodded professionally, maintaining our facade. Everything is prepared. I heard Marcus before I saw him, his expensive loafers clicking against the marble floor as he rushed toward the group. What's going on here? Who are all these people? Legal representatives from Carter Investment Group, Sandra replied smoothly. We're here to discuss the change in ownership. Change in. Marcus's face went pale. Dad. They're here. More footsteps. Dad appeared, his face red with either rage or exertion from actually having to rush somewhere. Mom trailed behind him, clutching her designer bag like a shield. This is outrageous. Dad bellowed. You can't just barge in here and... Actually we can, Sandra interrupted, pulling out a thick folder. As per Section 7.3 of the loan agreement you signed 6 months ago, Carter Investment Group has the right to assume direct control following 3 months of missed payments. You've been in default for 3 months and 2 weeks. We never agreed to that. Marcus protested. Really? I stepped forward, pulling out my copy of the contract. Page 42, paragraph 3. Your signature's right there, Marcus. Right next to Dad's. Though I suppose you were both too busy planning your next golf outing to actually read what you were signing. The lobby had gone silent. Every employee, from security guards to receptionists, was watching the drama unfold. Madison, Mom hissed, what are you doing with these people? I smiled, finally ready to drop the act. I'm not with these people, Mom. They're with me. Dad's face scrunched in confusion. What are you talking about? Allow me to properly introduce myself, I said, stepping beside Sandra. I'm M.B. Carter, CEO of Carter Investment Group. Though you might know me better as Madison Bennett, the daughter you never thought would amount to anything. The color drained from their faces so quickly I worried someone might faint. Marcus grabbed the edge of the reception desk for support. That's impossible, he stammered. Carter Investment Group is worth $500 million? I supplied. Yes, it is. Built from the ground up over the past 3 years, while you all thought I was processing loans at a local bank. You can't do this, Dad whispered, but the fight had gone out of his voice. We're family. Family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Was it family when you pushed me out of the company because a woman can't handle real business? Was it family when you handed everything to Marcus, even though he couldn't tell a profit margin from a hole in the ground? Now see here, Marcus started, but I cut him off. No, you see here. I nodded to Sandra, who began distributing documents to the gathered board members. I've spent the last 6 months watching you run this company into the ground. Dad's reputation and connections were the only things keeping clients from jumping ship. But now, I pulled up the company's financials on my tablet, projecting them onto the lobby's large display screen. Red numbers flashed everywhere. You've lost $40 million in the last 2 years. The Anderson contract? They're pulling out next week. I know because they've already signed with one of my other companies. The Miller Project? Bankrupt. Davidson? They're being audited for fraud. Mom's knees buckled and she sank into a nearby chair. All this time, you were building something you couldn't tear down? I finished. Yes. And now I own the company you never thought I could run. The board will never accept this, Dad tried one last time. They've known me for years. The board, Sandra interjected, has already voted. This morning's meeting is merely a formality to transfer operational control. Ms. Carter, or should I say Ms. Bennett, has presented a comprehensive recovery plan that they've enthusiastically approved. I watched as the reality of their situation finally sank in. Everything they'd dismissed, every capability they'd questioned had led to this moment. Security, I called out. The same guards who'd escorted me out yesterday snapped to attention. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Bennett and Marcus to their offices. They have 1 hour to collect their personal belongings. You're firing us? Marcus choked out. No, I'm saving the company from you. There's a difference. I turned to address the gathered employees. For those wondering about your jobs, don't worry. Unlike my brother, I actually understand the value of experienced staff. Your positions are secure. In fact, many of you will be receiving the raises that management has been denying for the past 2 years. A murmur of relief rippled through the crowd. I caught several smiles and approving nods. Madison, Mom stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Please, we can talk about this. Work something out. Like you worked things out when I tried to warn you about the company's problems? Or when I offered to help restructure the debt? I shook my head. The time for talking was 3 years ago. Now it's time for action. As security led them toward the elevators, Dad turned back one last time. That $50,000 you gave us yesterday. You knew this was coming. Why did you still give it to us? Consider it severance pay, I replied coldly. More generosity than you ever showed me. I watched them disappear into the elevators, then turned to Sandra. Let's begin the board meeting. We have a company to save. Hours later, I sat in what had been my father's office, now mine, looking out over the city. The board meeting had gone smoothly. My recovery plan was solid, backed by years of research and preparation. The company would survive, even thrive, under proper management. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. Messages from relatives, old family friends, business associates. Everyone wanted to know the story behind Carter Investment Group's mysterious CEO and her connection to Bennett Manufacturing. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Marcus's former secretary, Janet. Miss Carter. Sorry, which do you prefer? I smiled. Madison is fine. Madison, she squared her shoulders. I just wanted to say, some of us always knew you were the smart one. The way you understood the business, how you tried to help before they pushed you out. We're glad you're back. Thank you, Janet. I gestured to the stack of files on my desk. Ready to help me clean up their mess? He grinned. Already started, boss. After she left, I picked up the nameplate they'd never let me have 3 years ago. Madison Bennett, CO. Below it, I placed a smaller one, MB Carter, Carter Investment Group. Sometimes, I whispered to the empty office. The best revenge isn't taking something away. It's building something better than they ever thought possible. I had a lot of work ahead of me, but for the first time in years I was exactly where I belonged. And this time no one could push me out.